Hello, viewers. I have been trying to explain a travel writing book called From Volga to Ganga, written by Rahul Sankrityayan. And in my first video, I talked about how the writer has tried to depict Indo-European people's life on the banks of the upper Volga in 6000 BC in the chapter called Nisa. And that story, it took us back some 360 generations of human life. And it also includes how all the races of India, Iran, and Europe, they formed one people at that time. And it was also called the early dawn of humankind. So in today's video, we will try to know second section of the first chapter, Nisa. Okay, let's begin. Leaving them in quiet talk, we take a look round outside. Across the snow in one direction runs a trail of imprints of many skin-shod feet. Let us follow them up quickly. The trail slants and reaches the hill forest on the other side. We make haste and go on climbing, but there is no end to the fresh footprints. At one moment, we are crossing a wide snowfield. At another, we penetrate the thicket straddling the ridge of a hill and mount a new snowfield and new tree-clad slopes. At last, staring up from below, we catch sight of the skyline of a ridge bare of trees. There, the white mass of the snow rises to meet the blue sky. Silhouetted against this blue, several figures of human beings are in the point of being lost to view behind the hill. If the bright sky were not at their backs, we should certainly not be able to make them out. The bull hides thrown over their bodies are white like the snow. The weapons in their hands seem to borrow the same white color. It would be very hard to recognize their shapes on the vast, wide snowfield. So in this paragraph, the writer has tried to depict our ancestors' early days, how they went for hunting, how they try to live their life in their respective way, so that all kinds of primary things the writer has tried to mention here. So in these lines, he has said that uh, our ancestors, okay, or the Indo-European people who were living on the banks of Volga, uh, their life was not so easy. They had to struggle every day. In these lines, he has said that they had to fight for their survival. Okay, and they must go for hunting. And let's try to know what he tries to indicate through these lines. There, the white mass of the snow rises to meet the blue sky. Silhouetted against this blue, several figures of human beings are in the point of being lost to view behind the hill. If the bright sky were not at their backs, we should certainly not be able to make them out. The bull hides thrown over their bodies are white like the snow. So the writer has tried to portray another scene here where uh, all the forests are covered with snow, and even the weapons that is carried by the hunters, they are also covered with white color due to excessive snowfall. Going closer, we see at their head a woman of between 40 and 50 with a body powerfully developed. Her bare right arm is enough to reveal her strength. So here now writer is talking about another thing, that is, if we go closer, means if the writer, if he goes closer, then he sees a woman of between 40 and 50 years old, and that woman's body was powerfully developed, and her bare right arm was enough to reveal her strength. Means the writer is trying to say the writer was, the hunter woman, she was utterly enthusiastic. In her hair, her face, and all her limbs, she resembles the two young women in the cave, but it's much bigger. Here, the writer is saying that though her face, means that woman's face, and all her limbs, it resembles the two young women in the cave, but her was much bigger. In her left hand is a stout, sharp-pointed stick of birchwood, 4 or 5 feet long. Her right hand holds a stone axe sharpened by friction, its head lashed with leather thongs into the wooden handle. Behind her walk 4 men and a pair of women. One man may be a little older than the leading woman. The other ranges from a youth of 26 to a boy of 14. The big man has long, straw-colored hair like the rest, while a thick mustache and beard of the same hue overspread his face. His physique is muscular, like the woman's, and two weapons of the same sort as hers are gripped in his two hands. So in these lines, I don't have to delineate or explain. If you read the line, it clearly understandable. It is clearly understandable. Two of the other three males have exactly his bushy mustache and beard and only differ from him in age. Of the females, one is 22, the other 16 or nearly 16. Having seen the faces of the grandmother and the rest of the cave brood, we can compare them with these and are left in no doubt that old woman is the mold that has shaped all these men and women. From the implements of wood, bone, and stone in their hands, and from the intentness of their motions, Musans, it is obvious on what mission they are bound. Uh, so the author is trying to say that the way they were moving, the way they were behaving, it seems that they are going for some mission, like for some hunting. Descending from the crest, the leading woman, the mother, as we may call her, turned off to the left, the rest following in silence. As they moved over the snow, not the faintest sound came from their skid-wrapped feet. Suspended in front of them was a high rock face with boulders strewn about it. The hunters were advancing now very slowly and with extreme caution, in order, drawing out each stride to its greatest extent as they lifted foot after foot and finding holes on the rock with their hands. It was the mother who was first to reach the entrance of a cave. She stared intently at the white snow outside it, but there were no tracks of any kind. Then she stole into the cave alone. When she had gone a few feet, it bent to one side and the light became dim. She paused a while to let her eyes grow accustomed to it and then, going further, found three big bears, a male, female, and cub, fast asleep, if not dead, with a head sunk on the ground. No sign of life could be detected in them. So when they were going for hunting, at that moment, they had confronted three big bears. Okay, one was male, another was female, and the last one was cub, and they were fast asleep. Okay, if not dead. Then what happens? Stealthily, the mother rejoined her troop. At the first sight of her animated face, they guessed that she had made a find. Pressing the little finger down with the thumb, she held up the other three fingers spread out. Two men gripped their weapons and followed her inside. The rest stood still, waiting with bated breath. Once inside, the mother approached the he-bear and stood beside it. The big man took up his position next to the she-bear. Female bear means he means the male bear. The other took the cup. Then simultaneously their pointed sticks were plunged downward with such force as to pierce the flank and penetrate to the heart. The animals never stirred. The end of their 6-month winter sleep had been still more than a month distant. But the mother and her brood could not know this. They had to be on their guard. 3 or 4 times more they drove the points of their sticks into the valleys before rolling the he-bear. Then they fearlessly seized the bears by their forepaws and snouts and dragged them to the cave entrance, all laughing exultantly and talking at the top of their voice. So when they encountered a bear family, then the hunter family, they tried to capture that bear in order to get the food they wanted for their survival. And it was held by the uh, woman, or that woman which I talked at the beginning of the discussion. Okay, and she was very strong. Laying the big bear out flat, the mother drew a flint knife from inside her dress of skins and starting from where the wound gap, skin of the fur from the belly. Now, the mother, or the head female of that hunting family, she drew a flint knife from inside her dress of skins and starting from where the wound gap, skin of the fur from the belly. She tried to skin off the fur from the belly. To remove a fur so accurately with a stone knife is work for strong and experienced hands. So she was experienced. That's why she was able to remove a fur very accurately with a stone knife. At that time, only stone knife was available. Cutting off a morsel from the soft heart, she put it in her mouth and then another in the mouth of the youngest, the boy of 14. All the rest squatted round the bear and she went on cutting bits from the heart and distributing them. After cutting off the woman, she decided to distribute the meats. And when the first bear's heart was finished and the mother was laying her hands on the second, the 16-year-old girl went outside and stuffed a piece of snow in her mouth. The big man also emerged, put some snow in his mouth, and caught hold of the girl's hands. She resisted slightly, then quietened. The man put his arm round her and led to one side. When the two of them returned to the bears, each holding a big handful of snow, there was a brighter color in their cheeks and eyes. The man said, "I will cut, mother. You are tired." Okay, so this kind of thing happened after that. The mother handed the knife to him and turning cares the face of a youth of 24, took him by the hand and went outside. They ate up the herds of all three bears, on which since they had been hibernating. Hibernating means to go on sleeping for a long time. This process is done by some animals to survive, because in winter time you will not get enough food. That's why they try to behave in this way. Without food, little fat could be expected to remain. The cub's flesh, however, was rather more tender and appetizing, and of this they devoured a good deal. Devoured means to eat. Then all lay down side by side to take a little rest. Now they must turn back for home. So now for them, now they must return to home. The he bear and she bear were hoisted up by two men each. Now they hoisted up the he, male and female bear, by the two men each. All four men bound together with thongs of hide to a staff resting on the man's soldiers. One girl carried the cub, and the mother, grasping her stone axe, moved ahead. These savages had no notion of clock time. So the writer is addressing those hunters as savages, and he's saying that these savages, these hunters, they had no notion of clock time. Instead, they had no idea about clock time, but they knew that the night would be a moonlit one. But they knew that today could be this thing, and today could be moonlight or no moonlight, like that. So that thing they knew. They had covered some distance when the sun appeared to sink below the horizon. Actually, it had not gone right down, and twilight lingered for several hours. By the time it vanished, moonlight was raining on earth, in heaven, everywhere. Their cave home was still distant when, at a certain point in a tract of open country, the mother halted, listened with concentrated attention, and caught a sound. All stood in silence. The 16-year-old girl moved close to the man of about 26, saying, "Jeer, jeer, brook, brook, wolf." Means by uttering those words, the little girl, she was trying to indicate that there is a wolf and they may attack us. They might attack us. Nodding her head, the mother repeated, and after hearing that, her mother, that child's mother, she also repeated the same words that is uttered by the girl. Gur, gur, brook, brook, and added in a tone of breathless excitement, ready. And they were ready to attack and kill that wolf. Otherwise, that wolf could have killed them. Okay. The game was laid on the ground, and they all took a firm grip of their weapons and stood back to back, peering in every direction. All of a sudden, a pack of 7 or 8 wolves rushed towards them with lolling tongues. And at the time, a pack of 7 or 8 wolves, they rushed towards that hunter party or hunter group. And then the wolves, the 7 or 8 wolves, they were lolling their tongues. Okay, that means they want to eat them or they want to attack them. So they are indicating that thing. They came close, snarling, and began to circle around them. And after a moment, they came close. The wolves came close, and this began to circle around them. Seeing the wooden spears and stone axes in the hunters' hands, they hesitated before attacking. Meanwhile, the boy who was standing in the middle detached from his staff a length of wood tied to it, unwound from his waist a thin strip of stout leather, and with the two made ready a bow. Pulling out some sharp stone-headed arrows that had been concealments to hide somewhere about him, he thrust them and the bow into the hands of the youth of 24, pulled him into the middle, and stationed himself in his place. Two young men tightened the string and drew the bow, and an arrow released with a sharp twang struck one wolf in the flank. So at the time, they had no significant weapons or tools to kill or to fight. Therefore, they used an arrow, and that arrow had attacked one wolf. This time, the wound was mortal. Seeing the wolf motionless, the rest of the pack came close, licked the hot blood pouring from his body, and then tore it to pieces and began to devour it. So, after killing that wolf, they tried to eat it, devour it. Observing them preoccupied with their feast, the hunters lifted up their game and, running with stealthy steps, began hastening on their way again. This time, the mother in the rear, turning to stare back from time to time. Today, no snow had fallen, so they could easily find their way through the moonlit night by retracing their own footmarks. The cave might have been less than a mile distant when the wolf pack caught up with them once more. For the second time, they laid their game down and grasped their weapons. The archers shot several arrows, but could inflict no injury on the wolves, which were never still for a moment together. The wolves maneuvered about them for a while, and then 4 of them in one row sprang upon the girl of 16. The mother, who was at her side, thrust her spear into one wolf's belly and stretched it on the ground. Had the other 3 fastened their claws in the girl's thighs, pulled her down, and instantly ripping open her stomach, began to tear out her entrails. So at the time, the ancient people or our ancestors, they had no other option but to be a savage. They had to survive in that competitive circumstance. Just when everyone's attention was fixed on trying to rescue the girl, the remaining 3 wolves pounced on the unprotected back of the youth of 24, not leaving him the slightest possibility of defending himself, and dragging him to the ground, began tearing open his body also. So at that time, one boy was left unprotected, and then he was the prey of those wolves. And while his friends were engaged on that side, the girl had been dragged 30 or 40 feet away. And by then, one girl, she was also dragged 30 or 40 feet away by those wolves. The mother looked around. The young man was gasping out his last breath, close to the bleeding wolf. One of them thrust his spear into the dying wolf's open jaws. A second seized hold of its front jaws, and the rest, pressing their mouths to the wound, gulped the flowing hot brackish blood. The mother made it easier for them by cutting the jugular vein. All this had taken place in a few minutes. They knew that as soon as the wolves had finished eating the girl, there would be a new attack. Abandoning the dying man where the lay and raising the three bears and the dead wolf, they set off running and reached their cave in safety. So, since it was called as survival of the fittest, so that example you might have seen here, they had to leave their own family members in order to save their own life. Okay, so it happened. The fire was burning and crackling, and in its red glow, all the children and the two girls were lying asleep. The old woman caught the sound of their approach, and in a trembling, deep voice, "Nisa, you have come." "Yes," answered the mother. She first stacked her weapons on one side and then, unfastening her skin dress, emerged naked. The others put down the game, removed their wrappings of skin, and allowed the warm, comfortable glow of the fire to steal over their entire bodies. By this time, all the sleepers had woken up. These people were accustomed from childhood to start awake at the most ordinary sound. It was only by the most careful husbanding of resources that the mother had kept her family alive until now. The hunting of deer, hares, wild cattle, sheep, goats, and horses had come to an end before the onset of winter, because these creatures had migrated to the sunny, faraway lands of the south. So this is animal migration or bird migration. They do it for their own survival. That's why the hunters, they also try to kill them before the winter. The mother's group should also have moved somewhat farther south, but the girl of 16 had just fallen ill. According to the code by which men lived in that age, it was no part of the duty of the mother the family had to jeopardize the lives of all for the sake of one. But the mother's heart had weakened, and today they had lost two members instead of one. 2 months still remained before the return of the game. In this interval, it was still to be seen how many more lives would be lost. 3 bears and 1 wolf were not enough to get them to the winter. So they had to fight a lot in order to survive. They even sacrificed their own family members. It was a very tough time. It was a cruel time for them, for our ancestors or for our forefathers. Okay, let's finish till section 3. Later she got up and brought from one corner of the cave a swollen bladder, saying, Here is honey wine. Tonight drink, dance, enjoy yourself." The little ones were allowed a mouthful each from the wine skin. Their elders got more, and tipsy merriment sprang up. Their eyes reddened, bursts of laughter broke out. Someone sang a song. The big man started banging one stick against another, while the others began dancing. So at that time, they had no other option of enjoyment, therefore, or entertainment. Therefore, after a successful hunting, or if there is no success, also then do they just try to collectively sing, dance, and merrymaking. So that thing they do. It was a night overflowing happiness. They had a ruler, the mother. So at that time, I have told you that it was the mother who ruled on a particular family or a group of hunters. The grandmother, they had a ruler, the mother, but hers was not no rule of injustice or inequality. All but the grandmother and the big man were the mother's offspring, while she and the big man were both children of the old woman, so that there could be no question of mine or thine among them. In fact, a very long time was still to elapse before the coming of the age of property. The mother, it is true, had paramount authority over all the males equally. So if you become mother in those times, then the mother, she was automatically the paramount authority over all the males equally. Means she can have relation with all the male people at the time. It would be untrue to say that she did not regret the death of the youth, her son and husband at once, but the condition of life in that epoch forced people to think more about the present than about the past. So at the time, in order to survive, they had no other option but to think about present moment instead of past moment. Therefore, in order to live a life and survive, they often forget their own child, their own blood relatives. The mother now had 2 husbands left with her, and third, the boy of 14, would soon be ready. Of the children living under her rule, one could not know how many would grow up to take their place as husbands. So at that time, since no intercaste marriage is done or no inter-tribe marriage is done for various reasons, they just marry among themselves. They marry within their family. Therefore, one mother or one woman, she would become the head, and then after that next woman she would become, and then what happened is that woman will have relation with all the women irrespective of relations. Okay, relation was insignificant at the time. The mother being fond of the young man of 26, and the mother, she also fond of the young man of 26, means her own that son she was fond of for the physical intimacy and for romantic partner like that. Only the 25-year-old man was left for the three young women. On day when winter was drawing to a close, the old grandmother fell asleep forever. Wolves carried off three of the children, and when the snows were melting, the big man fell into the boiling current of a stream. With all this, only 9 survivors remain of the family of 16. So people also died in different ways at that time. So in that way, the family also got affected. Okay, that's it. Let's try to know this thing in our upcoming videos. I have talked about second chapter. So that's it. Thank you so much. My pronunciation is not excellent. I'm sorry for that. Please read in your own way. Thank you so much.